The moment we wear it, our spirits lift. It helps us grow strong in body and in mind. As we wear it, we learn patience and respect. The belt system motivates students to strive harder and continue growing. This uniform shapes movement into grace and turns performance into something thrilling. Now, embraced around the world, Taekwondo shares our culture, philosophy, and values with pride and spirit. Though it may seem simple, this uniform holds your passion and your journey. It belongs to Taekwondo. Wear the extraordinary. Be with Taekwondo.
The U.S. has confirmed a tariff cut to 15% on key South Korean imports, including automobiles, aircraft, and lumber, retroactive to November 1st. E-commerce giant Coupang now faces a class action lawsuit over its massive data leak. Online communities and major law firms are now taking legal action for compensation. The head of the Korea office of OpenAI held a press conference here in Seoul, where the firm unveiled its plans and ambitions to promote partnerships with local firms to facilitate AI transformation. The new tariff arrangement between South Korea and the U.S. has legally taken effect, with Washington now confirming retroactive tariff adjustments for Korean automobiles. Our Kim Do-yeon starts us off.
The revised tariff structure for South Korean exports to the United States has been officially codified. The U.S. Federal Register published the implementation notice for the U.S.-Korea Strategic Trade and Investment Deal on Wednesday, with the notice coming into effect on Thursday. Under the regulations, Korean automobiles and auto parts have a tariff rate of 15%. That rate is applied retroactively to November 1st. For other sectors, including timber and civil aircraft components, the effective date is November 14th, with aviation parts largely exempted from the new levies. The notice marks the formal execution of the agreement, finalizing the exchange of Seoul's pledged $350 billion investment for tariff stability. The Federal Register also read that the two countries' leaders have declared a new chapter in the US-ROK alliance, describing it as the linchpin for peace, security, and prosperity on the Korean Peninsula and the Indo-Pacific region. While this deal provides clarity for Korean industries, the US administration is digging in on its broader tariff policy. At an event in New York on Wednesday, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent addressed the possibility of the Supreme Court striking down the president's use of emergency powers, declaring that even if the court rules against them, the tariffs will remain. He said the Treasury is prepared to pivot to alternative trade statutes such as Section 301 or 232 to recreate the identical tariff structure, confirming the administration views this tariff regime as permanent. Despite these complexities, President Trump last week continued to pitch the tariffs as substitute for income tax.
But we'll be cutting income tax. Could be almost completely cutting it because the money we're taking in is going to be so large.
However, legal analysts note that unlike emergency orders, standard trade laws typically require months of investigation, and that this could create a regulatory vacuum if Supreme Court issues an abrupt ruling. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
President Lee Jae-myung today hosted dozens of pioneers in the manufacturing industry, whom he called heroes who have made the country what it is today. Yoon Jung-min reports.
The nation's industrial and economic capacity is the foundation of its success in democracy and industrialization. That was President Lee Jae-myung as he celebrated Trade Day on Thursday, saying that it feels that Korea's global status is elevated when he travels outside the country.
지금의 이런 민주주의든 문화 역량이든 다 이 경제력에서 나오는 거죠. 그리고 이 경제력을 뒷받침하는 엄청난 과학기술 역량, 그다음에 제조 역량, 산업 역량 이런 것들이 우리가 가진 힘 그 자체입니다.
President Lee, who himself was a factory worker, met some 90 workers at the Blue House Yeongbin-gwan guest house, pioneers in the manufacturing business who own decades of field experience in areas like automobiles, shipbuilding, and textiles.
여러 분야에서 정말 열심히 일하신 산업 역군이라고 불리는 분들이 많이 와 계십니다. 이 나라를 위대하게 만든 영웅들이죠.
He also vowed to make workplaces safer to minimize fatal accidents, saying Korea's industrial accident rate is higher than that of other developed countries, and there's a tendency for such accidents to take place more frequently at smaller firms.
우리 노동자들의 피땀으로 대한민국을 오늘 이 자리까지 끌어왔지만 이제 앞으로 갈 길은 조금은 더 선진화돼야 되겠다 그런 생각이 들어요. 일하다 죽는 일은 좀 최소화하고.
President Lee concluded his remarks by vowing to make a society where opportunities are shared on a fair basis and appropriate reward is guaranteed for one's contribution. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
As a public outrage continues over e-commerce giant Coupang's data leak, class action lawsuits have emerged. With the government cautioning over secondary harm, vendors on the platform also look to be affected by the breach. An Sung-jin has the details.
A massive wave of class action lawsuits is emerging in the wake of Coupang's personal data leak. More than 30 online communities have been created on major portals to organize damage compensation lawsuits against the e-commerce giant. The accumulated members of these major online communities exceed 500,000 people. As of Thursday, the largest lawsuit community is lingering at the 140,000 member threshold. With the data breach estimated at around 33.7 million cases, the number of those joining is expected to rise. Major law firms have also begun actively recruiting plaintiffs, indicating that legal action is rapidly expanding beyond online communities. Compensation in similar privacy breach cases has often been relatively small, at around 100,000 won or around $68. However, the unprecedented scale of this incident is fueling action for stronger legal accountability.
Historically, this kind of class action lawsuits doesn't benefit the individuals that much. But I think that the symbolic value is there, that this kind of breaches will gather more consumer interest and also more active action, resulting in more class action lawsuits.
On Monday, the first complaint asking for damage compensation from Coupang was officially filed with the Seoul Central District Court by a law firm on behalf of 14 Coupang users, seeking 200,000 won or $136 each. Another issue is emerging following public outrage over the data leak. As highly sensitive personal information has been stolen, more consumers began suspending purchases or deleting their Coupang accounts entirely, which inevitably affects marketplace sellers. 3/4 of Coupang's marketplace vendors are composed of small enterprises, and concerns have arisen that this movement could severely impact their livelihoods, with some saying that orders have dropped since the data leak. Growing reports of abnormal login attempts, unexpected overseas payment approval alerts, and smishing texts continue to increase consumer anxiety as users fear secondary offenses. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Artificial intelligence, or AI, has been one of the most widely recognized keywords in recent years. The term AI gained even greater attention when OpenAI released its large language model ChatGPT 3 years ago. As we approach the end of 2025, we have our business correspondent Park Jun-an here in the studio to walk us through how AI is being used by individuals and companies and how these technological developments are affecting our daily lives. Welcome back, Jun-an.
It's good to be back, Tommy.
So, Jun-an, as we all know, I'm sure many people are aware of AI. Now, with the large language models like ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini being introduced, how widely is AI being used by Koreans, including us?
Right, that's right, Tommy. So I actually went to OpenAI's press briefing today, and the company confirmed me that South Korea has the highest number of paid ChatGPT subscribers per capita in the world. Also, a data research center here estimates that there are over 21 million monthly active users of ChatGPT in Korea. An interesting thing is the way people in South Korea use ChatGPT. It is slightly different from what other global users use it for. Globally, about 29% of ChatGPT users rely on it for practical guidance, such as fitness, health, daily tips, and creative ideas. Another 24% use it primarily for seeking information, showing its growing role as a decision support tool in everyday life. But in South Korea, 29% of users use ChatGPT for work-related writing and communication tasks, such as translation, document drafting, and email writing, while 21% use it for practical guidance on how to perform specific tasks. A professor at the AI Research Institute says the reason AI is so popular in South Korea is that people feel both the trend and the urgency, a reaction largely driven by the fear of being left behind. Let's take a listen to what he had to say about it.
When we talk about this trend, part of it comes from the fact that AI has essentially become a new form of entertainment and exploration, drawing more people in. But at the same time, as the technology improves, people are realizing that AI can now take on a certain level of work, writing, research, even basic emotional support, which creates a sense of pressure. Think about students, professors, marketers. There's a growing concern that not using it might put you at a disadvantage.
Now, we all know how AI is being used globally. Then how is AI being used at the corporate level?
Right. As you just mentioned, Dami, companies and startups are increasingly adopting AI's tools in their operations. For example, one speaker at today's press briefing said that using AI is now a matter of survival rather than choice, because it is fundamentally transforming the way people work. Let's take a listen to what speakers had to say about using AI to enhance their work efficiency.
Our employees built an internal gallery where they could share prompts and learn from each other's successes and failures. And within just 100 days, it generated over 1,000 use cases, a clear sign that AI is becoming a true colleague in their daily work.
AI-powered systems can now handle everything from reservation changes to post-service feedback, enabling a fully end-to-end support experience that improves customer satisfaction and boosts call center efficiency.
So it seems AI is boosting productivity at the both individual and corporate levels. And Jun-an, looking ahead over the next few years or even decades, what do experts say about the future of AI here in South Korea?
Right. So the professor I talked with, he said he's very optimistic about the future of AI, which is in Korea. And he emphasized that it will be important and ultimately beneficial to develop AI models of the people, by the people, and for the people. Let's take a listen.
South Korea is one of the only countries in the world that doesn't even measure illiteracy, because, for all practical purposes, it has almost none. The population is highly educated, and the country has the highest level of IT proficiency anywhere.
The professor also said that AI models using Korean significantly reduce hallucination, which refers to the AI generating incorrect or fabricated information.
When AI thinks and speaks in one language, say English or Chinese, and then translates that into Korean, hallucination becomes inevitable. But with indigenous AI models that use Korean, we finally secure a fully controllable solution. On top of that foundation, we can apply Korea's unique strengths, improving people's quality of life, and ultimately accumulating national wealth.
Something to keep in mind when using AI and also developing AI. Jun-an, thanks for coming in tonight.
Always a pleasure, Dami.
President Lee Jae-myung has urged South Korea's political community to work toward what he calls just integration. Speaking at a weekly meeting with his top aides on Thursday, he noted that Wednesday marked 1 year since former President Yoon Suk-yeol's declaration of a martial law, a moment he described as one of the gravest crises to South Korea's constitutional order, ultimately overcome by the public's courage and solidarity. President Lee also stressed that proper integration must be built on reflection and accountability, underscoring his commitment to holding those involved in the martial law declaration responsible. South Korea says it is not considering linking the release of its citizens detained in North Korea with the repatriation of unconverted long-term prisoners here, but it will address each of them. Our Kim Bo-kyung tells us more.
The South Korean government is planning to repatriate unconverted long-term North Korean prisoners of war on humanitarian grounds and is reviewing related measures. But it is not going to happen via a swap with South Korean detainees held by the regime. This is according to a Unification Ministry statement on Thursday, which followed an NK News report that cited Seoul's National Security Advisor and stated that Seoul was mulling linking the two issues. There are up to 6 elderly North Koreans here who have yet to renounce their communist beliefs. And one of them, Anak-sup, who is in his 90s, recently called for repatriation to the north. The Unification Ministry said it recognizes the urgent need to resolve the detainee issue and that it was trying to address it through dialogue with the north. Currently, a total of 6 South Korean nationals are known to have been detained by the regime between 2013 and 2016. 3 missionaries, Kim Jong-uk, Kim Guk-gi, and Choi Chung-gil, and 3 North Korean defectors. When inter-Korean dialogue was taking place, the South raised the issue with the North multiple times. For example, during the inter-Korean high-level talks held in June 2018, the then unification minister brought the matter up, and North Korea's chief delegate said that related agencies were thoroughly reviewing it. The ministry said it is in regular contact with the families of the detainees, noting that in late September, Unification Minister Chung Dong-young met with the missionaries' families. International cooperation is underway as well. One expert says there is little possibility of resolving the issue promptly, as Pyongyang has officially pronounced that the two Koreas are two hostile states, although it is meaningful to constantly raise the issue.
Keeping the detainee issue in the public spotlight can put pressure on North Korea. Even though it's hard for North Korea to respond positively right now, this attention might make them look at the issue again. And if it helps reopen inter-Korean talks, the detainee issue could become one of the first topics on the agenda.
For now, the detainees' whereabouts and whether they are alive or not remain completely unknown. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
South Korea is positioning digital innovation at the center of its disaster response policy and inviting the world to join. The Interior Ministry brought together diplomats to share how technology is reshaping public services, such as climate resilience. Our Moon Hae-ryun follows this report.
The Ministry of the Interior and Safety hosted a year-end luncheon and policy briefing on Thursday with diplomatic representatives from 93 countries in attendance and shared the administration's progress over its 6 months in office. Minister Yoon Ho-jung highlighted the importance of sharing experiences and achievements within the international community for policy cooperation. He went on to outline Korea's approach with 3 key values.
Based on the values of participation, solidarity, and innovation, we are opening a new future built on democratic governance, AI technology, and the pillars of balance and inclusion.
The challenges Korea is working to address, from climate risks to digital transformation, are issues shared by countries around the world, making innovation a common mission.
I had the chance, for example, recently to give you an example to visit K-Water. And K-Water actually showed us what they are doing, building digital twins and using AI to create models of a flood situation. And that's something that is also very interesting for us in Luxembourg, because we're also prone to flood disasters.
At the Han River Flood Control Office located in Seoul, analysts use technology such as artificial intelligence and digital twins to help carry out its missions to track and manage flooding. As one of the 4 flood control centers around the country, it uses digital twin technology to forecast situations around the country without actually visiting the site. Specific scenarios can be replicated in a digital format for more than 3,000 rivers across the country, meaning that flooding risk management can take place on a national scale without needing observation stations at each location. Another advantage of having a digital system is that analysts are able to not only access multiple sources of data, but they are also able to access them all at once. With AI and data becoming the standard for efficient public service, joint policy collaboration is increasingly vital to keep pace with rapid technological and environmental changes. 문혜련, Arirang News.
Following talks between Russian President Vladimir Putin and U.S. emissaries for an end to the war in Ukraine, NATO's foreign ministers gathered in Brussels on Wednesday, where leaders accused Putin for showing no willingness to end the war. Ian-Jin has the details.
Almost all of NATO's foreign ministers gathered in Brussels on Wednesday, where European representatives reaffirmed their support for Ukraine. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said that while it was good that peace talks to end the war in Ukraine were ongoing, it remains unknown when those talks will end, and that it was necessary to make sure Ukraine was in the strongest possible position, not only to keep fighting against the Russians, but to be able to push for peace talks on their terms. This came a day after Ukraine peace talks were held between the United States and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Moscow called the 5-hour discussion useful, but said that no compromises were found. NATO foreign ministers accused Russian President Vladimir Putin of showing no willingness to pursue peace in Ukraine as they continue to stand together in support of Ukraine.
We, too, welcome all talks aimed at ending this war. However, at this point in time, we see no serious willingness on the Russian side to enter into negotiations, and that is why we must be clear about where we stand. We stand firmly alongside Ukraine.
Meanwhile, also on Wednesday, Belgium spoke out against the European Commission plan to use frozen Russian assets to aid Ukraine. The board of the European Commission approved a potential reparations loan for Ukraine to address its financing needs for the next 2 years. Ukraine's budget and military needs for 2026 and 2027 are estimated to total around $150 billion. Most EU states support the plan, but Belgian Foreign Minister Maxime Prévost spoke out against it, fearing it would bear the risk of potentially disastrous consequences from Russia alone, and that the European Commission's proposals did not address those concerns.
It is not acceptable to use the money and leave us alone facing the risks. The proposed reparations loan is clearly not a preferred choice. In the event member states wish to go in that direction, we demand that the risks Belgium is facing as a result of this scheme are fully covered. This is no unreasonable request. This is simply fairness.
While European leaders are set to hold another summit on December 18th, U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner invited the Secretary of Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council Rustem Umerov to a meeting in Miami on Thursday, which has been agreed to. Ian-Jin, Arirang News.
The first snow has fallen in center areas, including Seoul, from this afternoon. A preliminary warning for heavy snow has been issued for the northeastern parts of Gyeonggi-do province and northern parts of Gangwon-do province. Up to 8 centimeters of snow is expected around these areas. There's a strong cold spell around the country as cold air from minus 35 degrees Celsius came down from the north. Extreme cold of around minus 10 degrees was seen this morning. It will be cold tomorrow morning at minus 6 degrees in Seoul. Cold spells will start to ease off from Saturday afternoon. The freezing weather will continue tomorrow morning with Chuncheon at minus 10 degrees, Daegu and Gyeongju at minus 3 degrees. Daily highs will rise up to 3 degrees in Seoul and Chuncheon, 7 degrees in Gwangju and Daegu. From Saturday afternoon, light rain is forecast around the central regions until the nighttime. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is all we have for tonight. I'm Kim Dami. From all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.
The magical door to the world of K-animation is swinging wide open. Meet your instant new BFF, the adorable Catch. Tina Ping will have you hooked from the very first glance. Need a hand? Our Robocar Poli Rescue team is always zooming in to save the day. How about tagging along on Pinkfong and Pal's super exciting quest to reclaim their lost magic? With the mysterious life forms Kebion by your side, you can become a Kebion master and save humanity like the total hero. Protecting children's innocence while igniting their boundless imaginations. That's the magic of Korean animation. K-animation, the ultimate bestie for kids worldwide.
Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mo-gyan. President Lee Jae-myung is signaling a bold shift in South Korea's posture towards North Korea. In a series of remarks marking 1 year since the emergency martial law crisis, he proposed reopening inter-Korean contact channels, floated the idea of national apology for past provocations, and even hinted at adjusting U.S. ROK military exercises to create room for diplomacy. But the North remains silent. Official communication lines have been shut, and instead, Pyongyang is unveiling new long-range missiles, expanding cyber operations, and strengthening ties with Russia and Laos. As it prepares for a major political cycle that may lock in its hostile two-state doctrine, the strategic landscape on the peninsula is narrowing fast. For a deeper analysis of the situation in the Korean Peninsula, we are joined by Ko Myung-hyun, Senior Research Fellow at the Institute for National Security Strategy. A big welcome.
Good to see you.
And also joining us from Washington, D.C. is Patrick Cronin, Asia Pacific Security Chair at Hudson Institute. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
So let's begin our discussion first with Dr. Go, with the current diplomatic freeze. So lately, President Lee Jae-myung described the inter-Korean relationship as having not even a needle's eye of communication open. So from your perspective, how dangerous is this complete disconnect between the two Koreas?
Well, clearly, the lack of communications between highly armed countries like North and South Korea is inherently very dangerous. But at the same time, you have to take into consideration the fact that South Korea is now more willing to engage in North Korea, has been sending very proactive messages to Pyongyang, saying that the previous administration's aggressive posture towards the North is no longer the case. And I think North Koreans, in fact, reciprocated some of the actions of standing down by the South, such as switching off the loudspeakers along the DMZ, which prompted North Korea to suspend their trash balloon operations, for instance. So, and this kind of reciprocal actions that have led to virtuous cycle of de-escalation, despite the fact that there was no explicit communication between the two Koreas, points towards an implicit, a tacit shared understanding that the two Koreas shouldn't escalate or provoke the other. So I think based on this mutual understanding, I believe that the lack of communication is problematic, but not as urgent or like provocative or dangerous as it used to be a couple of years ago.
Right, so especially as President Lee continues to, provide gestures of conciliation. Building on that, President Lee also proposed reopening inter-Korean communication channels as well. So given North Korea's view that only the U.S. can guarantee regime survival, how likely do you think Pyongyang is to respond to Seoul's outreach, Dr. Cronin?
Well, it's impossible to read the intentions of Kim Jong-un, but he's able to shift and pivot very quickly. The question is, in the year ahead, is he going to keep repeating the same policy of the past few years or is he going to accept the olive branch and try to re-engage with both South Korea, the United States, maybe Japan, and others in 2026? This could resemble, say, the year 2018, the year of great symmetry. But right now, the indications are he's holding to the same policy, but there are important meetings coming up in the next couple of weeks, and maybe he'll start to indicate an opening toward shifting this policy. I think the final point here is that the United States and South Korea are inseparable, and so engagement with one necessitates engagement with the other.
Definitely. So President Lee, like I've said, also mentioned about potentials for making a national apology for, quote, past provocations against North Korea. He said it could be necessary. Dr. Go, in your view, could such a gesture actually help in reducing tensions?
Well, I think North Koreans are definitely going to welcome such gesture coming from Seoul. And I think in that sense, it could be conducive to further dialogue down the road. And I think President Lee is essentially taking like a gamble here because most of the repercussions are going to take place domestically. We know there's a very strong anti-North Korean segment of the society, which is going to be very critical of any move or gesture on the part of the South that can be considered to be as a concession to the North. And this will be one such instance. So President Lee will have to carefully weigh the pros and cons of providing such gesture to the North. And also, there's always this downside or possibility that North Koreans might decide not to reciprocate such gesture. They might just use it for the propaganda purposes. For instance, by arguing that what South Korean president has just said confirms what North Koreans have always been saying, which is that the source of instability in the Korean Peninsula is not North Korea, but it's the South. So, and then that's going to have, again, a cascading impact on the domestic public opinion. So I think President Lee will probably find that, the more explicit form of apology could have more downside than upside. So I think President Lee probably is going to measure the expression of, I would say, not an apology, but an recognition that there's been a mistake made very carefully. So in order to essentially limit the potential downside of such gesture.
Right. So an apology, it should be carefully thought upon as it could carry more weight than what could be expected. Now, the president also further suggested that Seoul could consider adjusting ROK-US joint military exercises to create space for diplomacy. Dr. Cronin, from a strategic deterrence standpoint, can these exercises be restructured without compromising Allied readiness?
Well, peace requires alliance readiness, and there is no substitute for realistic combat training. So there are real constraints on how far you can restructure these exercises to accommodate diplomacy. That being said, it is at the discretion of the leaders of South Korea and the United States to make tactical adjustments in timing, scale, to support diplomacy if there are productive talks emerging. We also must bear in mind that North Korea's strategic goal, an enduring one, is to weaken the alliance. So we shouldn't make a concession on a serious issue as weakening our readiness in order to hope that talks lead to some productive sort of result. We need to see some sincerity on the part of North Korea in this process early on as well.
Definitely. So it's really a tough balance between flexibility and deterrence. Meanwhile, North Korea, on the other side, continues to modernize its Air Force, unveiling a Taurus-like air-to-ground missile and also upgrading early warning capabilities as well. Dr. Go, what does this actually tell us about Pyongyang's evolving threat calculus and military priorities?
Well, North Korea has embarked on the long-term plan to enhance its the conventional military capabilities in addition to the nuclear capability that they already possess. And in a way, I think Kim Jong-un's ambition or aspiration is to be able to match South Korea's capability as equals. So South Korea had invested quite a bit in modernizing its long-range strike capabilities, especially with an emphasis on precision strike capability. And I believe North Korea had some sort of envy, so to speak, and therefore they are planning to catch up with the South in this domain. But having said that, I think it's going to be quite challenging for North Korea to do so. It takes a very advanced industrial and technological capability, in addition to having a vast economic resources that North Korea doesn't possess, in order to build a precision strike capability that South Korea possesses already. So I think it's one of the North Korea's way to, not on way, but North Korea's expression of ambitions and also their willingness to challenge South Korea's conventional superiority. So it's worrisome that North Koreans are engaged in this path of precision strike capability development. But on the other hand, I believe it's going to take quite a while for North Korea to catch up with the South, if ever.
Mm-hmm. So it could take a while to catch up with South Korea's standards. But the developments definitely are very concerning indeed. So this is definitely backed by cooperation between North Korea and Russia, which is growing lately. Dr. Cronin, what are the implications for the ROK-US alliance and the sanctions regime?
Well, I'm not sure that sanctions really matter to Russia or even to China in terms of enforcing them on North Korea. So that regime has already been severely weakened. I'm much more concerned with the fact that the Russian-North Korean cooperation is deepening. The Russians and the North Koreans have a longer-term plan, and they are going to persist in building up the conventional capabilities of North Korea. That will complement the nuclear asymmetry that exists on the peninsula. And it may open up in a future crisis, let's say over Taiwan in 2027, perhaps, the possibility for multi-crises in the region. So North Korea doesn't have to catch South Korea's capabilities. It just has to align itself with other major powers' potential moves, Russia's, China's, and then back it up by more political will than South Korea or the United States. So this is a very dangerous, serious national security element that must be watched by professionals. But none of that should take away from the desire for diplomacy, because I think there's a great sincerity on the part of Seoul and Washington to try to open up talks and ease pressures.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for pointing up on North Korea's ultimate goals. Now, in that diplomatic context, then North Korea has also sent high-level messages to Laos, showcasing ties with traditional socialist allies. Dr. Go, do you see this as a symbolic diplomacy or part of a broader anti-Western alignment strategy from North Korea?
Yeah, it's part of North Korea's broader campaign to engage its traditional allies and partners around the world. So when it comes to North Korea's foreign policy actions, this seems to follow a cycle. So there's a cycle retrenchment before, especially before the COVID years in the 2020. North Korea was subject to very heavy sanctions. So North Korea had retrenched itself diplomatically, and especially in the aftermath of the failed talks between North Korea and the United States in Hanoi in 2019. And then they went through these dark years of the COVID with self-isolation and also as disengagement from the South. And now I think North Korea is engaging more with the outside world, and they're in the diplomatic phase of expansion. And we have seen North Korea normalizing relations, not normalizing, but restoring relations and communications with China, Russia, obviously, but also with some European countries. There are now European ambassadors in Pyongyang, like the Swedish ambassador has been in Pyongyang since last year. So, and I think having completed the phase of restoring diplomatic relations with the European countries, now I believe North Korea is engaged in restoring relations with the former allies and partners elsewhere, especially in the global South. And I think, and also I think North Korea feels confident in doing so because they are experiencing that they are more accepted in the global stage. We have seen this in the Victory Day parade in Beijing in September, where Kim Jong-un stood alongside President Xi Jinping as well as Vladimir Putin of Russia. So I think this phase of expansion in diplomatic sense, I think it's going to persist for a while.
So alongside this diplomatic strategy from North Korea, we're also concerned about its developments in terms of cyberspace, Dr. Go. The Kim Jong-rat malware campaign, disguised as South Korean tax documents, actually shows evolving North Korean cyber tactics as well. What additional steps should Seoul and its allies actually take to harden cyber defenses against these threats?
Well, North Korean cyber threats it's not news. It's been going on for decades now, and South Korea has prepared itself against North Korea cyber attacks. So has preparations already in place, and especially one noteworthy development is South Korea's alliance with the United States in cyberspace. These are agreements and joint exercises that are being carried out since the previous U.S. administration of President Biden. But the two sides, South Korea and the United States, have agreed that they're going to take a more proactive approach when it comes to fending off cyber threats coming from North Korea and elsewhere. I think North Korea still represents a more of a traditional threat vector. North Korea tends to go after soft targets such as cryptocurrency exchanges and other financial institutions that have a lot of economic, I'll say, gains to be made by the North Korean hackers, but at the same time, their cyber defenses are relatively low level. And in that sense, I think the South Korea and the United States have made a good preparation for such attacks. But I think South Korea should be prepared against much more serious threat actors that are already penetrating or with what we thought to be very defended systems such as our telecommunication companies as well as defense industry companies that have been penetrated by foreign actors already. And in that sense, I think South Korea should work more and more closely with our key allies, United States obviously, but also other important cyber powerhouses, especially in the NATO countries, to fend off these growing threats.
Right, definitely. So close attention would definitely be necessary in that front. Now, North Korea is actually entering a critical domestic cycle with the Party Congress and Supreme People's Assembly that's coming up. Dr. Cronin, what signals are you watching for that could indicate any changes in Pyongyang's internal or external direction?
Well, I'm especially interested in indications of change on the diplomacy, on the military priorities, and on possible economic reforms that might be forthcoming in the next year or the next 5 years. I'm looking at two different reference points. One of them is the Chinese Fourth Plenum as they prepare for their 15 five-year plan. It's worth noting just how much Xi Jinping has doubled down on high technology and economic growth. And you can say that of every Asian power, except for North Korea. Will North Korea finally sort of start to adjust and think about technological change and economic change, or will it just continue to focus more on its military priorities? The second contrast is the 2021 Eighth Party Congress, where Kim Jong-un articulated a very robust, ambitious set of military objectives. He also talked about some very impressive economic objectives that were never realized. So again, I'm looking for contrast to the 2021 sort of list that he provided. And finally, are there going to be any personnel changes? Are there any HR issues here that we may start to see? Obviously, a lot of attention's been focused on his daughter, but at the high levels, it'll be interesting to see if there are any other changes around Kim Jong-un as he prepares for what could be a year of a shift toward more diplomacy or a doubling down on conventional military capabilities and closer relations with both China and Russia.
So this political season could shape what's to come internally and externally as well. Now, then, Dr. Cronin, finally, there's also growing talk that Pyongyang may codify its hostile two-state doctrine in its constitution or party rules. So if this actually happens, what kind of long-term impact would this have on inter-Korean relations and the future of our unification policy?
Well, history points toward unification. I mean, there's from the foundational sort of stories about the Korean people to the language to centuries of being unified, history points toward unification. But Kim Jong-un and the Kim regime points in the opposite direction. And if they codify a two-state, hostile state policy in their constitution, it just puts another barrier into short-term unification dreams and hopes. But I think those barriers will eventually fall. We just don't know when.
Okay, let's hope we could see some developments on that front moving forward. Thank you so much for your insights, Dr. Cronin. And of course, Dr. Go, we really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.
Korea, a globally recognized sports powerhouse. Behind the dazzling achievements, there's always an invisible